Okay, well, it's 6:02 on May 18th, 2026. I'll call this meeting of the City of Cheyenne Planning Commission to order. Will staff please call roll?
Justin Tripp,
Here.
Daryl Hibbins, Megan Connor,
Present remotely.
Tony Laird,
Here.
Bob Mathia,
Here.
Amy Hernandez,
Present via Zoom.
Boyd Wiggum.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay. First order of business here is approval of agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda requested? Okay, we don't have any minutes. Are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest, ex parte communications, lobbying, etc.? Okay, with that, hearing none, will staff please read item A into the record?
Item A, PLTA-26-1, special use approvals, creation of the regional entertainment overlay and development standards for off-track betting facilities text amendment.
Okay. Will staff please present the text amendment?
Chair, members of Planning Commission, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. I'm here to present the proposed text amendment regarding historic horse racing in the city limits. The goal of this ordinance is to align with the new state statute changes regarding the licensing provisions of historic horse racing that are now able to have more active city governing body participation. Effectively, if it is within the city limits, they do have review authority. What the purpose of this code amendment? Connor, could you hit that? Sorry, we'll get the other monitor on for you all. The purpose of this code amendment is to make modifications to the nonconformity section of our code. That's in Article 1, creation and modification of our definitions regarding historic horse racing, amendments to our special use process that are actually pretty long overdue, creation of a regional entertainment overlay district, which is designed to encourage these uses to go in specific areas of our community, and then creation of development standards related to off-track betting facilities. I do intend to walk through these one by one, and I also do have a map that I will show that will sort of demonstrate what the overlay districts look like. We do not have the formalized map put together. I'm still waiting on our GIS department to get that completed. The amendment text for nonconformances. This is essentially a little bit of a housekeeping item. We're adding the word legal in front of nonconforming. This is best practices in land use planning to call something a legal nonconforming use if it is in fact a legal nonconforming use, because just nonconforming on its own does not clarify that it is legal. So this is basically saying these are legal nonconforming uses. Item number 4 is a new item. Essentially what it allows the governing body, whenever they adopt an ordinance, and if they elect to include in that ordinance a sunset provision or provision where a use will become obsolete or have a date certain where it will have to end, this would allow that to occur and would allow it to not be classified as a non-conforming use. So how does that work in this scenario of historic horse racing? Let's say when the council adopts this ordinance, if they decide to put in the enabling legislation, the ordinance, a provision that says that all existing historic horse racing facilities shall cease operation by, say, January 1st of 2027 and seek an approval in accordance with this code, they could do so. That is the intent of this. This specific ordinance does not establish a sunset date whatsoever. It just establishes the ability for a governing body to do that. Likewise, this also would apply to other uses, say that they want to change them from permitted or conditional uses in our development regulations. They could fall into a special use approval, and they could have a sunset requiring a decision by the governing body. I should note that all of our present HHR facilities in the city limits have, except for the one located in the central business district downtown at Lincoln Way and Central, have been approved by the Board of Adjustment, which is a board very similar in composition as yours, volunteers, uncompensated, and appointed by the governing body upon recommendation by the mayor. We do have another cleanup portion of our ordinance, which reflects, basically is intended to help provide clarity with the overlay district. Essentially, this is the addition of explanation as to what happens if there is uncertainty in the measurement of a zone district based on a measurement from point A to point B. In our municipal code right now, we have a measurement requirement for sexually oriented businesses, where it says that one is supposed to measure from the wall of the facility to the property line of a church or a school. There is no avenue or direction as to how we make that interpretation. Likewise, we have other descriptors within our development code, which do note distance separations. What this does is it sets a clear practice that's consistent with best practices that basically says that if there is a disagreement on those boundaries, which we truly don't expect to happen, but if there is, that disagreement would be settled by the person asking the question, the landowner, to contract with a licensed surveyor and make that measurement, and then we would update maps accordingly. The next step, and I apologize for the smaller font, the next amendment are some targeted amendments to the review criteria for the special use approval. First of all, as you see in the staff report, it is a lion's share of the staff report. There are a lot of different amendments that really reflect how it works right now. The present special use permit process was largely developed prior to the Unified Development Code, and it incorporated language that was pre-UDC. For example, the UDC clearly calls the governing body the city council, and then by definition, the city council is defined as governing body. The current special use section actually called the governing body. It made sense. But we changed it to reflect city council to follow the entirety of the UDC. So we made some consistency changes. In addition, we made some changes that aligned it with our current notification practices to notify property owners within 300 feet of any application for special use that's considered by the governing body. We added a posted notice provision, so they have to post a sign on the property similar to that of a subdivision or a zoning. And we also added a mailed notice provision. So those items have been included in the special use process, and they also have been created in a way to match the other elements of code, so it's consistent, because it was largely inconsistent. The previous special, or the current special use approval process, really is limited to temporary uses related to oil and gas services. So this would be temporary uses like laydown yards, oil and oil exploration, those types of items. We've changed it to make it more broad, that if something is ever classified as a special use in the use table, they could utilize this process. So it's designed as a one size fits all. Within the review criteria, we did essentially add 2 new review criteria. One of them is on top. Basically, it is a catch-all that does this application for special use meet the UDC review criteria and the development and design standards. So basically, if it's in a zone district, doesn't have the appropriate landscaping, doesn't have the appropriate building facades, design materials, all of those items. But it also states that the governing body has a flexibility to add additional conditions for any special use that they feel will help mitigate any impacts that this special use might have on a neighborhood. This could include items in the case of like oil and gas support services of additional landscaping, potentially sound walls that could be installed with an oil exploration business, but also in the terms of an off-track HHR facility, this could include items such as additional landscaping, limitations on access, even looking at limitation of hours of operation. The catch-all with criteria number 1 is that the standards need to be relevant to the specific situation. So that essentially is the rational nexus test, that it has to be related. It can't be something that's so extreme and something that's unrelated. The other item is number 9. That is an addition of another criteria, basically as to does this use contribute to the public and provide additional benefit. For example, is this a component of a larger complex that might serve more than just one isolated group? So for example, if we look at a historic horse racing facility that is standalone on its own in a small building, that could be one review criteria where they said, okay, we have this historic horse racing, it's benefiting that one specialized group. But if you look at a historic horse racing facility that could be part of an overall redevelopment scheme or a complex where it's catering to different individuals, like maybe a entertainment center or other types of options, those could be benefits that could be evaluated as part of the review criteria. The other items were just a couple of cleanup items within the existing review criteria, just to align them with best practices and to make sure that they did match other elements of how our code is written. The proposed overlay district and use table, we've done a couple of amendments to the use table, partly cleanup. Number 1, we have removed the columns for planned unit development and also Capitol Height overlay district and airport overlay district. Those columns don't need to be in the use table. Those are specific to an overlay district. They are not a base zone district that should be included in the use table. Similarly, the HHR enabling RE regional entertainment district is not one that should be reflected in the use table. However, in section 5.1.2 of our UDC, that's where we establish our zone districts. We noticed that we hadn't clearly established the earlier overlay district that we adopted for urban use, and we hadn't clearly stated the establishment of the what we call the RUCAL. That's a restricted use control overlay district. That's a mouthful. That is an overlay district that limits uses based on environmental remediation. So in addition to identifying the RE overlay district as a city zone district, as a housekeeping item, we included the RUCAL and the urban use overlay district as well. Essentially, for the historic horse racing, we permitted this as a permitted use in the RE regional entertainment overlay district. We have allowed it to be considered as a special use in our CB and CBD zone district. Apologies for the typo on the PowerPoint. One of the requirements in the CB community business and the CBD district is that it is at least 500 feet from specific uses, which I'll get to a little bit further down, and that the parcel of land be adjacent to a minor collector, principal arterial, or a major collector or minor arterial street. Basically, it has to be a lot that is adjacent to a major thoroughfare and not embedded deep into a neighborhood. I don't think I'll be able to log into the web map, so I might need to switch over. Okay, members of the commission, sorry for the delay. This is a rudimentary map that I'm pulling up real quick that sort of explains the overlay districts. Now, the overlay districts are 4 different areas in the community that are envisioned to allow the historic horse racing facilities to essentially land without having to go through the governing body's special use permit process. Essentially, they can walk in if they meet these criteria, and they can apply for a site plan and then apply for a building permit. I'll quickly highlight the 4 areas of the community that we're looking at. The 4 areas, this is the High Plains Road interchange at I-25. It is set up in a way that it is 3,000 feet either side of the center line of the interchange with Interstate 25. This is the double roundabout interchange, and it has a qualifier that the parcels must be adjacent to the interstate or adjacent to the interstate with the exclusion of any railroad right-of-way or state-owned land right-of-way. Essentially, what that does is that skips over the Welcome Center, and it skips over the Burlington Northern Rail line that runs on the east side of Interstate 25. There is a provision for an absolute depth of no more than 25 feet from the right-of-way. What that's anticipated to do is to create an entertainment corridor or an entertainment area that would be located around that interchange. In the event of annexation of nearby parcels of land, if they were to annex at the time of zoning, they would be rezoned in accordance with this, where they would have the base zoning set, and then they would also have the overlay district established concurrently. In these overlays, there's not a requirement for separation from churches, schools, or child care centers, or city-owned recreation and athletic facilities, but they'd be able to locate anywhere within. That's one of the areas that is a target area for this development to occur. Another area, this is West Lincoln Way. The aerial base map will catch up in a second. This area is properties that are within 300 feet of Lincoln Way between the east or the western city limits, and this is pretty much Little America. This is the older fueling center, and Tres Amigos is over in this direction, and the Best Western. But basically, this is within 300 feet of the right-of-way on either side. So it includes some properties on the south side as you approach Crow Creek. 2 other areas that are included as target areas are the 15th Street corridor, which this is the depot here on the far right. It would be the structures that are located between the alley between Lincoln Way and 15th, adjacent, and also the Reed Rail Corridor, where it is properties that are adjacent to the Reed Rail Corridor. I would note that these blue radius, the the circles that you see here, the radius, in the overlay district, those do not apply. So it could be anywhere along this area between 23rd and 15th Street. One of the provisions is if it is located within the Reed Rail section, that use must take access to the maximum extent practical, essentially, on the Reed Rail corridor. At this time, we are presently going through engineering with Burlington Northern, and they're still trying to determine where accesses will be. So in the event that access is not possible because there could be a fence, a service road, or an area the public's not welcome, they would be able to, through the administrative adjustment, seek an alternative where they could access the adjacent street.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Speaking of the blue circles, I believe the term is radii, but
Radii, yes, that's what I was looking for.
It kind of looks to me like those would be the radii around what would otherwise be the kind of facilities that we're trying to avoid, the childcare centers, the schools, churches, et cetera. Am I reading that right?
Chair, through to the commission, yes, in the RE overlay district, since these are targeted areas that are more urban or regional in destination, those are areas where the radii is not deemed to be restrictive. In the other districts, the community business and the CBD, they are, and I'll show you how that looks as we look out this direction. This purple area, this is central business district zoning. This orange area, this is CB zone district. And again, the radii here, like for example, around Holiday Park, this is around a church. This is the Methodist Church. This is around a state childcare. It trims off some of the property, so it would only allow the uses to occur within areas along Lincoln Way, a small section of area along 17th Street, 18th Street, and then 19th, and then it slowly disappears. All of these areas here, because they would require special use approval by the governing body. They'd have to go to the governing body for approval. The areas in the gray hatched area would not. In evaluating these proposals or evaluating how this interacts, this is East Lincoln Way this is Maury. No, this is Logan. From Logan heading west, you're going to have an area roughly between Logan and then this is Hot Springs, where you would have the ability for parcels that are fronting this principal arterial or converse, this minor arterial, where they would be eligible for the use to be approved by a special use permit. In this area, this is a area south of Logan. This is Logan. This is Nation Way right here. This is Lincoln Way. This is a triangular area. There are a couple of lots that are not within the radii of childcare, but they also are not adjacent to a minor arterial, principal arterial, minor collector, major collector. So they would not be eligible. For example, this interior lot, this one, and these ones. So that's how this works. As we travel down Lincoln Way, we have the Cheyenne Plaza, where you have a variety of businesses here in Cheyenne Plaza that would be eligible for that land use. And then as you go up onto Dell Range, very similar as you head out towards, this is Rue Terre. This is west of Converse. You'd be looking at facilities to be located along Dell Range and also in the area of Sweetgrass, or Sweetgrass and Bluegrass Circle. I would note that the buffer map, the radii, does need to be amended by our GIS department, because one of the items that is removed was childcares that are located in shared building complexes. So for example, if it's a strip center with a childcare in it, that won't count. The way it's been set up is it's only for independent childcares that are standalone. And the reason for that is because if you're looking at a mixed use development, for example, you could have a childcare facility that could elect to co-locate with one of these larger facilities. And we didn't want that provision to fight against the actual use itself. Apologies that the other map wasn't complete. We've been working on that with the GIS department, and they're falling behind on that. Okay. Do we have any questions on the overlay district map before we pop back into the regular presentation?
Mr. Chair, through you, could you go back to I think it was one of the first ones you showed, but down there at the High Plains Road interchange? So when you then popped up a big square shape or rectangular shape over all that with that 2,500 foot and 3,000 foot. So right now, the only part of that that's in the city is kind of the northwest quadrant, right?
Chair, correct. On this map, through to Commissioner Laird, on this map, the area that is highlighted, that yellow, that is unincorporated county. So the only area that is in the state limits right now is this CB zoned parcel of land that's located on the northwest portion of that interchange. It's actually developed with historic horse racing track right now, or facility right now.
Right. So my other question, I think the definition, it gave a certain distance from the center line of High Plains Road. And then it said perpendicular, I think, to the interstate right of way. So eventually High Plains Road will be extended to the east. Are you taking that into account, or is this all just based on the existing High Plains Road alignment?
Chair, through you to Commissioner Laird. That's a great question. It took a little bit of time to make sure we could adequately describe this. How the measurement is worded in the text is you start at the center line of High Plains Road, where it intersects the right of way for I-25, and it travels 300 feet either direction following the center line. And then from that rectangle, so essentially if you had a polygon from here that's 3,000 feet, you would measure 2,500 feet perpendicularly off of the edge of the right of way. And if it's adjacent to the right of way and within 2,500 feet, then it would be eligible for that land use. On the north side, or the northwesterly side of this, it's easy because these properties are less than 2,500 feet deep. So anything across the road loses out on adjacency, so it's not included. On the east side, that's an area where we have a lot of unplatted lands. And since it's unplatted, it has the boundary that is, number one, interrupted by, in this case, another parcel of land, or it's maxed out by the 2,500 foot as measured. So that's how we're getting that polygon there. And this is also in the unincorporated county.
And just as a follow-up, Mr. Bloom, for clarity, if that area were to be annexed into the city and subdivided, then that polygon would shrink to include only those parcels adjacent to interstate and High Plains.
Chair, that is a great observation. And I point yourself to an example that exists in nearby Laramie, Wyoming, where there's a Maverick station located on South 3rd Street at Interstate 80. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that. They have a sign overlay district, which basically means that if you have a property that was within X amount of feet of the interchange, you were allowed to have a taller sign, a sign that exceeded their height limitations by twice the height limitation and also twice the square footage. When the Maverick was developed, it was developed on one large lot that fell within that criteria. And then after that sign was constructed, then they subdivided the land, and now Maverick falls outside that zone, and their sign is a non-conforming sign, subject to the non-conforming use provisions. So yes, this has the ability to shrink if subdivided because of that adjacency requirement, and it's not an uncommon practice for overlay districts. Now, if it were a base zone district, there would be some concern with a subdivision of land modifying a base zone district.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Yes.
That reminded me of another one that I thought of when I was trying to figure this piece out. So I mentioned before, eventually High Plains will be extended to the east someday. So you say in your description here, any subsequent relocation, reconstruction, or realignment of High Plains Road or Interstate 25 shall not alter the boundaries of the overlay district. Would that include this extension that I'm talking about, or are you talking about the piece that's already built if it were realigned, for example?
Chair, through you to Commissioner Laird, it would not change anything. It would not change the boundary. If this roadway were relocated as part of construction with High Plains Road being extended another direction, we would revisit this specific ordinance and identify if any necessary changes need to be made in the way that that overlay district was described. If that were to occur, we'd very likely end up having lot and block description on the other side, and we could probably more appropriately make that description via lot and block. Right, Chair, we do intend to have a better map that will be presented with the governing body, and I again apologize for the rudimentary nature of this, but one thing I would note is in evaluating all of our current facilities that we have right now, they all do fall within these zones and within the setbacks. I will note that on Pershing and Ridge, is that where? Yeah, they all fell into the locations. I believe we'll double check that. So where are we? That's Pershing and College. This is Pershing and Ridge. I believe there's a radii issue with this radius that shouldn't be here. This is the one in the old Tuskers. So this one will be taken out, but most everything that is there on our cursory look, that there aren't any ones that would be extreme non-conforming that wouldn't meet that separation from childcare, park, church, or school facility.
Mr. Bloom, why do you think that you're going to be able to take out that radius that captures the old Tuskers at the corner of Ridge and Pershing? What was it? What was generating it that no longer applies, that it would come out?
Chair, through you to the commission, I'm not exactly certain how the GIS map pulled that one together, because the center of that radius is right here. You can see it on the map, and there is no use there other than that's Papa Murphy's Pizza. There is not a childcare in that location. When we had done our initial analysis, there was no childcare that was within that 500-foot range. no childcare. There wasn't a church. There wasn't a city-owned recreation facility. There wasn't a school. So it's pretty obvious by looking at that radius there that there's nothing there.
I have a question. Chair, through you, next to Papa Murphy's is a childcare.
Sure. Okay, that's where it came from, and the problem, the reason it will be removed is because it is not in an independent building, because it is in a strip center, so it's a single bay of a multi-unit complex. That answers that question as to why it popped up. It did not pop up on our initial drawings.
Mr. Chair, are we asking general questions about the whole proposal now, or are we still just focused on the map issues?
Just the map.
I think we're talking about the map now. I think we've got further proposal, and then we'll try to address the text.
And plug the other one in. We'll go there. And sure, we can go back to that map if we would need to in the future. The remainder of the presentation talks a little bit about the development standards that are being proposed. These development standards are in line. That's the description of the overlay district. The development standards are in line for properties that are located in the CB and the CBD zone district. Essentially, those are the ones that have that 500-foot separation from any elementary school or secondary school, a child care center operating as a sole primary use of an independent structure, a place of worship, which is a church, or a public park or recreation facility. The measurement this describes how it would be made. This follows our sexually oriented business measurements, which are pretty much modeled off of what is done as a national standard for measurements. And then we have our second qualifier, which is the adjacency requirement for something to be adjacent to a collector, minor arterial street, or principal street. And we have a qualifier in there and just more of a notation that states that just because it's adjacent, this doesn't indicate that access is required to those streets, because a lot of times there are access restrictions to those major roadways because of traffic and safety concerns. So they're pushed off to adjacent streets. So it's just noting they have to be adjacent, but access isn't there. Similar to what you see on Tusker's, where their access comes off of the adjacent street. I believe it's Olive Street and not the historic access that used to be on Pershing. Again, in the Reed rail overlay portion of the RE zone district, we wanted to make sure that no one were to develop this use and simply ignore the corridor. That is not the intent of the corridor. So it was to activate the corridor. So we have a provision that requires that that pedestrian entrance to be at the corridor, and a process for exceptions. Those exceptions are for issues or examples where connection can't be made because people don't have permission to be there, whether because it's an access road or worst case scenario, the whole Reed rail concept fails and we're not given direct access to that Reed rail corridor. And that wraps up the report. This would be a sample motion for you all. This is our recommended motion, but if you all wish to go back to the map for further discussion or wish to discuss any other details, I'd be more than happy to ask Connor to swap out the computer screens.
With that, are there questions for staff? Commissioner Laird?
Mr. Chair, through you, if you could go back to the definition of a gaming center. Just want to make sure I had this clear. You're talking about the use includes dedicated wagering areas, electronic terminals, et cetera, often featuring ancillary amenities such as lounges, food and beverage service, and the on-premise sale of alcoholic beverages. So I think you're saying all those uses plus the gaming area are included as part of that gaming center. And I guess I guess the examples I'm thinking of in my mind that maybe we could try to clarify is, so the Derby Club off of Pershing has not just a gaming center, but the bowling alley, arcade, liquor store, packaged liquor store, other things going on there. So would this gaming center only be defined as the gaming center part, as opposed to, let's say, the Horse Palace out at Swan Ranch, where they just flat say no one under 21 can enter the facility at all?
Chair, through to Commissioner Laird. Sorry, I did not have the definition pulled up on this PowerPoint. Apologies for that. The way that those two facilities are set up are different. The Horse Palace, the entirety of the facility is considered the HHR facility. This is the one located down south. So that one is age restricted in its entirety. The one that is the Derby Club located on Pershing, that one has one entity, which is essentially a portion of that building. It's a separate tenant space. That is the only area that is identified as the historic horse racing facility. And that one is age restricted similarly as the Horse Palace. So at the Derby Club, one is able to walk in with the family through the common areas, and they can peel off to go to one side to go to the bowling with no age restriction, or they can peel off and go into the historic horse racing facility, but there would be that age restriction. So it's only applying to the specific use. Now, the Derby Club is a good example of a facility that is representative of review criteria number 9, which it shows that it's an element of a redevelopment or development that's proposing, a benefit to more than just the gaming clientele or the historic horse race users, that it's creating some additional benefit through providing other services. And Chair, through to Commissioner Laird, I'm going to note one more thing in the definition. We specifically did not include hotel or motel as a use accessory to the gaming facility in the RE overlay district, specifically because we wanted to make it clear, and the expectation to be that if one was to be developing lodging facilities or something of a resort caliber there, that they needed to zone to our CB zone district, which would mandate development standards. In areas that are within the RE overlay, say at High Plains, it would allow for this use in our industrial zone districts that are out there. However, our industrial zone districts do not have design standards for the building. So it could be a metal building with a door and appropriate landscaping. But if you were to build a hotel, it wouldn't be permitted in the industrial zone districts by right. It'd have to change over to the CB district to get those design standards. So that was not an oversight, that was intent.
While we are talking about this, I find a little bit of the language here curious, and it strikes me as something that's gonna invite trouble down the road. And maybe I'm overly wordsmithing. The second sentence, the use includes dedicated wagering areas, electronic terminals, and administrative space. That part makes sense to me. Then we have the often featuring ancillary amenities, such as lounges, etc. I don't know where and why we have the phrase often featuring, other than the fact, I guess it maybe grammatically flows nicely, but are we insisting that it includes some of these other things in order to be a gaming center permittable under this new code? Or are we saying these things are optional, or they're just illustrative? At some point, I can imagine somebody challenging a permit, either whether it's granted or denied, based on, I think it strikes me as a little bit vague the way it's written, whether it must include it, may include it, shall include it. I don't like it. I don't know how to fix it right now.
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, that's a really good observation. This definition was pulled together by looking at lots of different definitions ranging from state of Wyoming, state of Kentucky, Nevada, lots of different ones. Perhaps instead of saying often featuring it, it can say may feature accessory uses such as, and that might provide more clarity. Let me know if that does, and that could be something you could add to your motion.
And maybe as a follow-up, as I understand, the reason for the list of ancillary amenities was it was crafted specifically to not include the lodging that you were staff was discussing earlier.
Chair, that is correct.
Yeah, I think we need to tighten this up to make it clear that it can include these other things, but it needs to be, I guess, exclusive. If it's not one of these things, then it can include these items, but only these items is what we're shooting for, correct?
Chair, that is correct.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Laird. Yes.
Mr. Chair, through you, now I'm looking on the staff report toward the end of page 11, first top of page 12, amendment text 5.6.10, Regional Entertainment Overlay District. And there's an A, B, C, and D, but I'm down in D, permissible uses. All uses allowed in the underlying zoning district are allowed as indicated in table 5-1, notwithstanding table 5-1. And then it lists a number of other uses shall be a permitted use within the RE overlay district. So we're saying that those will now be uses by right if it's in the overlay district, regardless of the underlying zone. Is that the intent of that little section?
Where's that at? Chair, which page of the staff report was that on? Chair, members of the board, of the planning commission, I found that here. So all uses allowed in the underlying zone district are allowed as indicated in table 5-1. So what that means is if it's shown as a permitted use, it'd be allowed as a permitted use in that zone district. So for example, the overlay covers CB zone districts. It also covers industrial zone districts and those ones. So it would allow those uses permitted or conditional, however they're labeled. And the intent is that other uses such as liquor stores, restaurants, entertainment venues, the amusement, recreation, other campgrounds or recreational vehicle parks are also permitted. Sorry, I stand corrected. That's the area where we specifically excluded hotel. Because that would still require the base zone district to be changed to a CB district if they wanted a hotel.
So, Mr. Chair, I guess my specific question about the way that's written, are we saying that, for example, a campground in an RV park could be uses by right? Some of these I mean, I can understand out at Swan Ranch perhaps, but the other areas that are in the more developed part of the city, I wouldn't think we'd be adding those as uses by right.
Chair, through you to Commissioner Laird, that is correct. The way that's worded, those would be allowed. If you wish to amend any of those uses out like campground or recreational vehicle park, you could do so in your motion.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Connor White, Planning and Development Department. So even if those uses are allowed, campgrounds have specific regulations they still need to meet. So to fit a campground like along the Reed Rail, I don't know if they could actually meet all the requirements in our campground regulations to do so. So that's also something to consider is yes, even though it might allow those now as a use by right, there are other requirements just by being a use by right doesn't mean you can meet all the other requirements for that area. So while yes, staff is proposing to allow those as a use by right, maybe along Reed Rail, finding a property that can meet all the standards that we now have for campgrounds in the UDC might be very difficult.
Along those same lines, as I read this, I don't see how some of these uses that elsewhere would be treated as conditional in whatever zone district they're permitted. I don't see how that is preserved here if they are a use by right, because in my mind, a use by right and a conditional use are mutually exclusive. And I'm thinking specifically of liquor stores and bars as being the type of thing that might be more conditional. And it doesn't look like there's anything conditional here if they're in the RE overlay.
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the way this is worded for permissible uses, it does say as indicated in table 5-1, which I guess if it's not on the list of additional items, it would retain how it's listed in the table. So for example, if it's not in the overlay district, it would require that it be a conditional use. However, as written, you all are correct that if it's in the RE overlay, it is now listed as a permitted use. And if it were a conditional use, it would be permitted and that conditional use provision would be gone. Chair, members of the commission, for clarification, in the CB district, bars and liquor stores and those items are conditional uses. We've had a handful of those who've gone through the board of adjustment for approval. One of those was the liquor store at the Derby Club. There's another one that I can recall, the Maverick up on North Yellowstone, the Big D out on technically North Greeley Highway, which is that segment between Fox Farm Road and Interstate 80. That's North Greeley Highway. Fun fact. And also at Swan Ranch, the historic horse racing facility there's a conditional use for their liquor sales because that is zone CB as well. With the way that this RE overlay district is crafted, the conditional use approval for the historic horse racing at Swan Ranch would not be required for that liquor license element. It would be able to be a by right use similar to the historic horse racing, as well as those properties that are located along the Reed Rail and also along West Lincoln Way and portions of 15th Street.
I imagine we'll want to get back to that. I've got a couple, 3 questions. What is the necessity and of including the sunset of non-conforming uses, of legal non-conforming uses to this? Or is it just one of the things we're catching along the way?
Chair, members of the commission, the reason for that is in the event that the governing body wishes to essentially put a sunset on, for example, the historic horse racing when they adopt the ordinance. Right now, the locational review was based on the county commissioners making that decision, and then the city having to go through and have an approval by the Board of Adjustment, where the governing body did not precisely weigh in on that location. So in the event that they wish to bring them all back to the table, essentially for reevaluation based on their historic operations, this would give the governing body the ability to do so.
But as I understand this sunset of non-conforming uses is going to apply to all the other non-conforming uses that currently exist, including the ones that just got maybe annexed in, or is
No.
this going to be, I didn't see how it was specifically confined to applying to gaming facilities.
And Chair, that's a great observation. I'll further expand on this. The intent is that if there is a action by the governing body to change what is currently a conditional use or a permitted use, anything in the use table today, to a special use, so something that has an S on it, which right now the only things that would have an S on it, if approved today, like if approved through this process, would be the gaming center and also the oil and gas support services in the HI district. Right now, if they were to say want to change, let's use childcare as an example, to a special use, if in that enabling ordinance, the one where they make that change, they could elect to put a sunset date in there. It doesn't mandate that they have to, it just gives them the option that they could if it's something that they wish to do. Does-
Thank you. It strikes me that this is written so that this code change would apply without tweaking to full-on casinos if the state legislature would decide that that's where Wyoming was headed. Do I understand that correctly, or was that an intent? Or
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the intent was that this was very isolated and limited to the historic horse racing, and it did not apply to general casino type of operations. We would be able to see a casino coming pretty reasonably well, because it would require legislative action, and it may actually require more than legislative action due to agreements with our local tribal agencies regarding gambling.
okay, but just for our own protection, though, I know what the intent was, but am I wrong in observing that it seems like this could apply to casinos, meaning that a casino would not pop up someplace other than one of the places permitted here? Are we safe there? That would be a goal in my mind.
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the way we've crafted it, we're confident that this cannot apply to casinos. Like the typical casino you would see in Reno or Las Vegas. The definition clearly states is for the historic horse racing and parimutuel betting, based off of the results of live horse racing. And also it exempts any interpretation that it would apply to skill-based games, which are ones that you might see in banks of seven at like a local tavern. Also things where you might place a coin in and the coins drop and you can catch coins, or the claw machines. Those are all considered skill-based games. So we made sure it didn't apply to the facilities that have the statutory allowance for those, which I believe is around seven.
Mr. Chair, through you. What? So just a big picture question clarification. So this so-called special use approval is strictly goes directly to the governing body. It gets applied for and goes directly to the governing body. It doesn't have any action by either the planning commission or the board of adjustment, unlike say the conditional uses.
And chair, members of the commission, that is correct. This would go directly to the governing body for the decision.
Are there any questions from Zoom land? I guess while we're here and reviewing, I know we've got two members of the commission that are attending via Zoom, and I don't want to overlook them.
I have no questions.
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bloom, I had kind of a question that surfaced in an earlier discussion too. We were talking about the distinction between the facility that's in the building I still think of as the old Montgomery Wards. I think Derby Club, I think. I'm not an expert on exactly which company has which location around town. They're not places I frequent. Versus the one down at Swan Ranch. And we were discussing what was defined as governing here. Do we need to tighten up the language to be able to distinguish which gaming facilities people can walk into with kids, if the kids are going to go do something else, restaurant, bowling, etc., or not? I'm a little concerned that both things can happen, and I'm not entirely certain whether we're clear on what we're dealing with here, or if we need to be, or if it's up to the discretion of the owner.
And chair, members of the planning commission, I don't believe we need to make that call here at the Unified Development Code level. I believe that the age restrictions are put in place by the state licensing agency, the ones who facilitate the license. I mean, they're the ones who put that restriction in place.
Can you please pull up the map? Or does anybody else want to talk about the text before we go to the map? And I guess where I'm headed here is the number of radii that the exemption under the RE overlay is going to grant an exemption to along the Reed Avenue corridor. It looks like there's a lot of what I would call sensitive locations that we're carving out, and I wonder whether or not whether we want to do that, given how close Reed Avenue is to kind of the, everything from Catholic school to other things, or is that something that specifically the governing body has expressed a desire for?
Chair, members of the commission, my computer has died. It spent too much time off plug today, notably because of a extended public services committee. BD hasn't had time to recharge. At this time, when it came to the radii and looking at the urban fabric, we recognize that in our downtown areas, that those are urban areas with a variety of uses. So that's why we as staff, when we were asked to look into this, we basically identify that this is a mixed use area, which is super dense, super walkable. It's a variety of different uses. And as a carrot to try to encourage development in these areas that are lightly developed, we essentially recommended removing those restrictions. Notably because in urban fabrics, a lot of those restrictions aren't expected. And that's the whole purpose behind it. It really is just a idea to encourage, I don't know if it's a word, urbanity.
I like the term urbanity. Is there a best practice on that we need to be aware of as we're thinking about these places where we're granting the RE exemption through the overlay?
Chair, members of commission, I didn't look into whether or not that was best practices. I looked into how did it fit into our community, and in my opinion, it appeared that it looked like it would fit in.
Any other questions, comments, desires for amendments? Is there a timeline that the city council is looking for this? Or is this something where we could ask for a repeat with some tweaks in language as opposed to trying to amend on the fly here?
And chair, members of the planning commission, we would like to try to move this forward with an introduction at our May the 28th meeting. I believe that's the Tuesday after Memorial Day, 26th, and then have it wrapped up by the end of July, which would have it effective in parallel with state statute. So there really isn't much room for postponement. But you're more than welcome to suggest amendments, and we can try to fine tune those amendments here. But you always do have the power to postpone. However, it could create some delays in council adoption of the final ordinance.
Commissioner?
Chair, through you, I do have a question, and this is just being new, I guess, to this language and looking. I understand there probably isn't a regulation requirement through state statute. Well, what is generally for 500 feet? What established that? Why do we do 500 feet from schools, and why isn't it larger than that? And then I have one follow-up after you answer that one.
Chair, members of the commission, to Commissioner Tripp, the 500 feet was a measurement that was picked. We evaluated 1,000 feet, and 1,000 feet essentially excluded most every property zone CB. It really narrowed it down to something that wasn't reasonable. 500 feet, what that represents is, I mean, our downtown area and our urban core, it's just over a block and a half. So it almost gives people about almost a 2-block radius from these uses. And that's really where it came down from. It was a number that was selected.
Thank you. And Chair 3, my second question is, as you discussed, and I caught on quickly what you meant, because Papa Murphy's, there is a child care right next to there, but it's not the sole primary use. There's another building in there. Why do we only consider for child care unless its own building? Because my concern would be, say Papa Murphy's went out of business and somebody bought that building and converted in, and you have you have gambling right next door to a child care facility. Why do we only say in a sole building?
And Chair, members of the commissioner and Commissioner Tripp, the reason for that was primarily in the event that you had a mix of uses in a complex, that we didn't want someone to essentially shoot themselves in their own foot by introducing a childcare type of arrangement that could complement the complex. In some areas, you might have a facility that's larger that may have childcare services or a daycare or some type of learning institution that holds that license, and that could be a benefit to a family or that's coming in where maybe one grouping wants to go into the age restricted for this off-track betting, and they'd like to have childcare for their child to either enhance their learning or just to be watched. That was the way we framed it.
Thank you.
Chair, if I may, I do believe that the concerns that I heard from you all were regarding the definition, making sure we tightened that language down. And what was the other concern? Because I think both of those were able to be adequately addressed for us to be able to move forward with this item to bring to the governing body.
Mr. Chair, through you to Director Bloom, I don't know if this is the one you're thinking of specifically, but my main heartburn, I think, was with this permissible uses in the RE overlay new section, and the fact that we've added a list of use by rights to these underlying zoning districts. And if I had to make a motion now, I would probably want to amend it to not include that, say the second sentence there, not have any special use by rights just because it's in this overlay district. I think letting the gaming facility be there is enough, and they should go through the hoops for the rest of it, is my thought.
Okay, was that what staff was thinking of as being the other one? Does that sound familiar?
Yes, that does sound familiar. And Chair, members of the Commission, Commissioner Laird, if I may just add, the reason that was included was we were looking for uses that could be considered common for regional entertainment. And primarily the number one that accommodated these gaming centers was the alcohol license, the liquor sales, those type of things. So that was one that we had initially included. And then we expanded it just slightly to include the other uses you see, which were the campgrounds, the recreational vehicle park, those types of items. So if you do look at recommending that be removed, we just ask that you kind of look at it in two parts. Number one, is the entirety of the sentence, or is it just maybe one of those uses? But either way, we're okay with forwarding whatever your recommendation is to the governing body.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff before I open it up for public comment? Anything from Zoom land? From the commissioners? Okay, with that, I'll open this up for public comment. Is there anybody here from the public who wishes to speak? Okay, please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Dr. Mark Rennie, Cheyenne City Council. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you. And the impetus for this ordinance change arose a couple years ago. I, along with the executive directors for the Wyoming Association of Municipalities and WCC, Wyoming County Commissioners Association, worked with an interim committee in the summer of 2024, worked with the bill trying to get through the legislature in 2025. Thought we had a good bill that everybody agreed on, but it died in the end. So after that, if you recall, a little while prior to that, we had seemed like we got a significant influx of HHR venues in the community. And what we learned in doing that, obviously, was that the city council had no control generally over where they went and how many we had. That was determined. The licenses were given by the State Gaming Commission, and state statute at that time gave permission for locations to go just through the county commission. So And yet it was the city council that seemed to get all the grief from the citizens because, we were all getting emails and calls by how many of these are we going to have? Why aren't you regulating them? Why aren't you controlling them? And we kept saying, we have no control. The state's given us no control. It all goes through the county commission. And we had 7 of at the time, there were 9 HHR venues in the county. 7 of them were within the city of Cheyenne. And of those 7, only 1 was zoned properly, and that is the one in the central business district. And again, so as a result, in talking to my colleagues and our frustrations, when our attempt to give the city some control through the legislature failed, then I approached Charles and said, look, my colleagues and I would like to regulate this as much as we can through zoning. And we would like it. We're fine. There are 4 areas that we think work where we'd like to promote development and see them go. And those are Reed Avenue Corridor, 15th Street, West Lincoln Way, and the High Plains Interchange. Any place outside of that, we want them to come through us. The other problem was when it went through the Board of Adjustments, that's not an elected board. It's not, I know they're responsive to the citizenry, but not like I think that we are when we have to stand for election every 4 years. So, so the request, in talking with my colleagues on the council, I went to Charles and said, look, we don't mind, we would like to see development in these 4 areas. And if allowing HHR to go there as a use by right helps develop those areas, we're fine with that. Outside the city, or outside of those 4 areas, we no longer want it going to the Board of Adjustments. We want it to come directly to us. And so as a result, that requires a special use permit in order to kind of take care of the 4 areas that we were interested in. We had to do the overlay districts. So this is and so Charles and staff, every now and then they touch base with me, but this is what they've been working on for a year now and trying to get all the parts to work together. This is what's come out of it. And they also, as he's told you, has also used the opportunity to change some deficiencies that we've had in our zoning ordinances. So that's where the incentive came from. That's where, I know, Mr. Chairman, you asked about Reed Avenue. That was one of the specific areas that the council wanted to promote some development. But this is how it started out. These were our initial requests, and this is what you have. So I would hope that, if you tweak it a little bit, I'm fine with that. But in the end, I hope you can support it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Maybe this is an exception to our protocol, but are there any questions of the speaker from the commission? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I understand there are members of the public who wish to speak on this online.
Mr. Chair, possibly. If any member online would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature and I can give you permission.
Are there any members of the public who wish to speak online? Hearing none. Public comment is now closed. With that, I think I'm looking for a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend the governing body approve text amendments to the Unified Development Code, amending UDC sections 1.3.11, nonconformities, 1.4.4 definitions, 1.4.5 interpretation of zoning map, 2.2.7 special use approval, 5.1.2 zoning districts established, and 5.1.4 use table and creating 5.6.10 regional entertainment RE overlay district and 5.7.13 gaming center development standards as outlined in this staff report and recommended by staff, noting the amendments meet the review criteria of UDC 2.4.1.d. I think I got all the lines in there.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Laird. Discussion by the commission or proposed amendments to the motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Laird.
I would propose to amend the motion to exclude under the amended text 5.6.10D permissible uses, to exclude the bars and liquor stores in that list of the newly permitted uses.
Okay, I'll take your proposal as a motion to amend. Do we have a second to the motion to amend? And can you remind, it looks like Commissioner Tripp is looking for that.
If you're in the staff report, it's the bottom of page 11, top of page 12.
Your permissible uses. Do I have a second for discussion?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. It's been, the motion to amend has been seconded by Commissioner Tripp. Now we can talk about it. Any members of the commission want to talk about removing the bars and the liquor stores from the list of what will be now uses by right in the regional overlay district, if established as proposed? Commissioner Laird.
Mr. Chair, just to support my motion, I think for the most part in the table now, bars and liquor stores are the only place they're a use by right is in the central business district, essentially. And so it seems like in that code, the spirit of the code is that those are pretty big deals that we want to go through a bit of a process to consider where they're going to go at. And I'm just trying to stay in the flavor of that. To be honest, it sort of goes against my libertarian instincts a little bit, because I'm not that crazy about the fact that liquor licenses are as tightly controlled in this state as they are. But nevertheless, the code is what it is, and they're only now we go through a process for everywhere except the central business district for those.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment? Any other discussion? Any more items on this list that we should discuss, including in the amendment?
Mr. Chair, through you, could I ask staff a question?
Go ahead.
To the motion. So obviously part of these proposed, the 4 proposed areas are in the central business district. And then I think part of the Reed Avenue corridor is not, is that correct? But it's in the urban overlay. Is that correct? And if so, would the bars and liquor stores be a permitted use there as well?
And Chair, members of the commission, good question. In the urban use overlay district, the bars and liquor stores will still fall to the base zone district, which in that UU district, it is MUB, mixed use business. So they would still require a conditional use approval. For example, West P Edge, for example, they had a conditional use approval. They still would have a conditional use approval. The Rail Spur, same situation. They would. Any new business that meets the qualifiers of the RE overlay district, adjacent to Reed Rail, say the Wyoming Tribune Eagle building, they would also require a conditional use approval for that bar or liquor store approval. As proposed with that motion, and if this were to not pass.
Okay, any other comment? Any other discussion? Hearing none. As a reminder, I'm going to call for a roll call vote. And as a reminder, this is a vote on the proposed amendment to remove bars and liquor stores from the list of allowed uses by right in the RE overlay district. Will staff please call roll?
Amy Hernandez,
No.
Justin Tripp, Bob Mathia,
No.
Tony Laird,
Yes.
Megan Connor.
No.
Mr. Chair, that amendment fails.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion, proposed amendments to the proposed code? Commissioner Tripp.
Yes, Chairman, I have a proposed amendment on page 12 of the staff report. So it'd be under 5.7.13 gaming centers, section A. So the language where it says child care center operating as sole primary use of independent structure, I would like to make amendment that says child care center at time of application.
Okay, we've got a motion to amend. Do we have a second to the proposed amendment?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Is that Commissioner Connor? For the record, who seconded the amendment, please?
This is Commissioner Connor. I seconded that.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Would Commissioner Tripp like to explain his amendment?
Yes, my amendment is based on this. Child care center at time of application would make it so if there's a child care in that area, that would apply to that 500 feet rule. So it wouldn't be the sole building. So my example would be you have across the street. So back to Papa Murphy's, there's a child care right next to it. Say there's a gaming facility going to open up within that 500. There's still a child care facility there, though it's in an independent, not in an independent building. I still have concerns on that. So that's the basis of that amendment.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion from the commission?
And Mr.
Commissioner?
Chair, just to clarify, maybe from Commissioner Tripp, so we're not just adding saying that at the time of application, but we're striking the words operating as the sole primary use of structure?
Yes, I should have probably clarified that better. We would strike the words operating as a sole primary use as an independent structure. So it would read child care center at time of application. Because you want to be fair, because say there isn't a child care there and somebody's going through permits and they're already in it, and then somebody opens a child care with, and that wouldn't be fair either. So at the time of application.
Okay, thank you. Any other further discussion from the commission on the proposed amendment? Commissioners on Zoom land? Hearing none, it's been moved and seconded. Will staff please call roll on the amendment to revise the language around presence of a child care center, even if it's in a building with other uses?
Megan Connor, Megan Connor,
Aye.
Justin Tripp. Bob Mathia,
Yes.
Amy Hernandez,
Yes.
Tony Laird.
No.
Mr. Chair, that amendment passes.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Tripp, be sure to touch your button so we can record your vote. Okay, we've got that amendment passes. Any other discussion, any other proposed amendments? I don't think I can offer an amendment to tweak the language around other uses such as, if anybody else is interested in that issue, this would be the time to take it up. Further discussion? Further amendments? Hearing none. Will staff please call roll on the motion to approve as amended?
Just wanted to take note real quick of on my paper that's as amended. So back on the main motion, Bob Mathia,
Yes.
Justin Tripp,
Yes.
Amy Hernandez,
Aye.
Tony Laird,
Yes.
Megan Connor.
No.
Mr. Chair, that motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Will staff please read item B into the record?
Item B, PLTA-26-2 carports, text amendment.
Okay, will staff please offer its report?
Chair, members of the Commission, Connor White, Planning and Development Department. All right, so the text amendment before you has to do with carports, as the name says. So this text amendment was actually brought forward. Staff was asked to look at it by a council member. I will note also that there's a lot of public that we get constant calls about when it comes to carports. I can probably safely say within the past month, I've had at least 2 dozen phone calls that basically deal with what this text amendment is. So starting out with this, with carports, a little bit of background. Carports are accessory buildings under current code. They're considered accessory buildings, reviewed as accessory buildings. What that means when you follow accessory building code is 1, you're allowed 2 accessory buildings on your property. Accessory building square footage is basically dictated by how big your lot is and the size of your house. So an accessory building can't be larger than your house, can only be 15%, or the total of both accessory buildings can only be 15% of the square footage of your lot. Additionally, when it comes to setbacks, accessory buildings are not allowed to be within your front yard. They have to be 10 feet behind the front of the house. So whatever the closest front wall of the house is to basically your front property line, you measure 10 feet behind that before you can even put an accessory building. That does not allow a carport on your front driveway. So under current code, any carport you see in the community where it's on a front driveway is illegal. It is a zoning violation. Should not be there. Probably doesn't even have a building permit. On corner lots, basically carports, if you want to have it face the side street and be put on a driveway there, also cannot be there. Accessory buildings are required to be 25 feet from your side property line if it has vehicular access facing that side street. So again, any carport that's on the side property line or side street for a corner lot, if it's there currently, it is also a zoning violation. Not a lot of people know this throughout the community. We also don't get a lot of complaints. Most of the complaints I'm getting are, why don't you allow me to have this on my front driveway? So this was brought to us by a council member to look into it. And that is basically the basis of this text amendment, is to allow them to be on front driveways. So some of the things we had to look at for changing this is basically making carports not accessory buildings or considered accessory buildings. So two of the things we have to kind of amend in here are the definitions. So with building accessory, we did add a line in there so that carport accessory to residential uses on lots that do not require site plan review shall be regulated exclusively under the standards of section 589, which is the new section for carports, and shall not be considered an accessory building for the purpose of this code. And then we did give carport a specific definition in here, just so it has one. So a carport is an accessory building, or yeah, it's still, and I know in the definition it says it's an accessory building, but it's to offer limited protection to vehicles from the elements, and the structure may be freestanding or attached to another structure. So kind of looking again, this kind of goes back to what I was talking about when it comes to current code and proposed code. With current code, as I mentioned, they are considered accessory buildings. They need to be 10 feet behind the front of a principal building. Corner lots, their side setbacks 25 feet, and they are limited. You are limited to 2 accessory buildings total. So if you have a detached garage and a shed, those are your accessory buildings. You can't add another accessory building. So if we didn't make it where carports weren't accessory buildings and just kind of put in standards to allow them in the front, if somebody had a garage, a detached garage and a shed, you still can't put that carport basically on your front driveway if it was still considered an accessory building. Accessory buildings are limited on the square footage, as I mentioned, the 15% of your lot area, and then also basically the size of your house. And then under current code, technically any accessory building can be enclosed. With the proposed amendments, kind of the regulations that we're proposing, which is in the staff report, it's under that 589 carport section. Basically, you would be allowed to have them on your front driveway. They would need to be a minimum of 2 feet from the property line that's along that front street. And then the director may reduce that setback down to 0 through administrative adjustment upon finding that the carport will not interfere with a current or future public sidewalk. The reason we added that in there, that it could be reduced to 0, is in some cases you do actually have a right-of-way that is extremely large, where you might have an attached sidewalk and then another 10 feet of right-of-way before you hit the property line. So in cases like that, where we look at it, you could actually get your setback on the front basically reduced to 0 for that carport. Otherwise, the minimum is 2 feet from that front property line. But ultimately, this does allow them on front driveways. On corner lots, it would be the same thing. If you have a driveway that faces the side street, you can put a carport. It can be within 2 feet of that side property line. And again, depending on conditions of the area, it could be reduced to 0. For side and rear setbacks, they'll just conform to accessory building setback standards for each zone district. So you can still put them in your backyard. This isn't creating anything where it says you can't have a carport that's alley loaded or anything like that. They just follow the setbacks for normal accessory buildings in the backyard, but they're not considered accessory buildings for the number of accessory buildings you can have. We did end up limiting these to one carport per dwelling unit. So single family home, you can have a single carport. It can be your front driveway, it could be basically at the back of the property off the alley, wherever you choose to put it. We cap them at 600 square feet. And then we do have within here provisions. So if you did want an additional carport, or you did want a larger carport or something of that nature, it can go to the Board of Adjustment for a conditional use. That's similar to what we do with accessory buildings. Accessory buildings, if you want a larger accessory building, you want more than 2 accessory buildings, you go to the Board of Adjustment basically for a conditional use. It gets reviewed and Board of Adjustment can approve kind of those changes and allowance to have additional or extra. For properties that, and if you noticed, I had it per dwelling unit. So if a property does have like a duplex, a flat over flat duplex, they can technically have 2 carports. You have 2 dwelling units. Same thing if you have a accessory dwelling unit, technically have 2 dwelling units, you can have an additional carport. We also put in here that carports, no more than 2 sides of a carport may be enclosed in any manner. On any side where the enclosure is provided, the lower 50% of the vertical wall facade shall remain open and unobstructed in the full horizontal extent of the facade. The reason for putting this in there is so that we don't start getting these tunnels. You can probably find some of these throughout the community. You start getting people enclosing the sides completely, throw it up against the garage. Now you got 3 sides enclosed. It starts to fill in with a lot of things other than just cars. That's not the intent of allowing these in the front. These are meant for the people who are looking to protect their vehicles, not come extra storage space for everybody's junk. So that's why we have it at the 50% enclosure on the sides. It still keeps it open. It basically makes it so it's less likely to become more of a new garage addition and keeps it as just what it was meant for protecting the vehicles. And it also allows for just enforcement of if there's any nuisances for junk and trash and things of that nature. So you can see definitely different carports that are already out there throughout the community. Noting the one on the left, it's obviously in the front of the house. That one would become conforming, most likely with these regulations. The upper one on the right, technically that is a carport that comes off the front of the house. Yes, it is integrated into the house. That's a much nicer carport, but that is a carport. As you can see, the bottom part is actually enclosed. We do actually have that within that standard I was reading from earlier. If somebody does start to basically enclose the bottom 50%, it does have to have design standards where it matches basically the house. I do believe actually that one in the top, if I measured correctly, I think that might actually already meet setback requirements to be there. I wanted to throw that in there though to show different kind of options of what a front carport could look like. And then the one on the bottom, as you can see, that's basically at a 0 foot setback. These are all different options of what could happen or what it could look like with the proposed text amendment. Again, this text amendment being brought forward from a council member. And then, as I also said, I have probably had dozens of phone calls, even just in the last month, of basically what is up on the screen of what people want to do. Rarely do I get phone calls of complaints about the illegal ones that are already out there. It's mostly people calling and saying, I want to put a carport on my property. This is where I want to put it. The minute they tell me it's on their front driveway, I have to tell them no. And they're usually not very happy with me at that point. Then they ask, well, how can I go about doing so? And that requires variances, have to go to the Board of Adjustment, isn't guaranteed you'll get a variance. So staff kind of looked at this as it seems that a lot of the community is okay with having carports on the front driveway, whether they be metal carports. I actually had a gentleman who came in last week and wanted to do similar to actually the one in the upper right. He wanted to do an extension off the front of his garage and make it match his house. Again, I had to tell him, unfortunately, with our current regulations, you can't do that. But I did tell him there was a text amendment coming up. So if he did want to come support it, he definitely could. So with that, staff does recommend approval of the text amendment. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. I guess my first question is, how in the world did we wind up in a world that the picture that was in the top right was regulated as a carport? It strikes me as what I'd expected a really nice restaurant or something. I did have a couple of thoughts. One, in our definition of what a carport is, we start off calling it an accessory building after saying that it's not. Surely there's a synonym we could use for building that'd work in there. An accessory device, an accessory structure,
Mr. Chair, I was
something like
actually
that.
just going to say accessory. We could change it to, instead of building, structure, just an
So,
accessory structure.
because otherwise I think somebody could slice and dice. Again, that makes me a little nervous in terms of somebody complaining and saying this is vague or nonsensical or just undermine credibility of our process. Second, is there any way we could tweak this so, and one of the pictures captured it, so that, you know, yeah, we're talking about setbacks from the front lot line or from lot lines or things like that, 2 feet, which seems inconsequential to me. 2 feet might as well be 0. But is there any way to have the setback be a little bit further from a sidewalk so that it has to be set back X from the front lot line and X from the edge of any sidewalk, future sidewalk, something like that, so that it's not right up against the pedestrian way. And then finally, I was kind of looking for words, doing a word search in the proposed ordinance. What do we have to ensure that these things don't blow away? Because I'm envisioning their utility is the reason we want them. Yeah, there's the sun, but we have hail and we have wind. Is that something that should be included in
Mr.
a
Chair,
new regulation?
if I can interject, because I had the same question and made myself a note as I was reviewing this. And then I think almost at the very end of the proposed new section, that says a building permit's required. So I'm presuming that in the building permit process, they're going to make sure it's adequately anchored. And then an inspection will make sure that it's built that way. So I don't know that we need to address that. I don't know how we would address it any better in the code.
Mr. Chair, through you. So with any structure on a property, if it's over 200 square feet, it does require a building permit. And I know when it comes to carports, one of the things that they look for is how is this being anchored? So that is actually a requirement with building code to anchor these structures properly.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for staff from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question on how did you settle on 600 square feet?
Mr. Chair, through you. So when we looked at the square footage, it's kind of taking a look at what do we allow for accessory buildings right now when it comes to like detached garages, or what's a typical detached garage you're finding. In most cases, if somebody is looking at 2-car garages, things like that nature, you're getting close to that 600 square foot. Not all the time, but you can get to 600, especially if it's a 20 by 30. Right there, you've got your 600 square feet. And with a 2-car garage, that's probably around what you're looking at. In most cases, I always see a garage being at least 20 feet wide And then you got to kind of consider the depth of most vehicles nowadays. Now that square footage could be taken into various accounts. It doesn't have to be 20 by 30, can do anything to meet that. But also I have seen carports where people want them for their campers. Those can get awfully big, depending on the size of the camper. So that's kind of how we looked at the square footage, and just, we felt that 600 was high enough to give people the option, but not going too crazy where you might get a carport that is actually somehow larger than the house in some cases, or the footprint of the house, because that's how accessory buildings work, is you can't have a footprint for your accessory building bigger than the footprint of the house. So it's still kind of keeping the building, I know it's not an accessory building, but accessory to the house.
But you said 25 by 30, that
Well, 20 by
20
30.
by 30.
Yep.
A lot, the carport in that lower right-hand corner, is that 600, would that meet the 600 square foot limitation? Bothers me having two cars sitting there.
Miss Chair, through you. I don't know the exact measurements on that one. More than likely it could be like a 12 by, it probably meets the 600, I should say, just based on kind of the width of that driveway and the width of it. It's more than likely meeting the 600.
Okay. I guess the other thing I found a little confusing was when you wanted 50% of the side covered, it doesn't matter where it is on the side. I didn't quite understand.
So, Ms. Chair, through you, it'd be the upper portion of the carport. So kind of the example I would go with is the one on the left. See how it kind of angles, the roof kind of comes down onto the side a bit. Now, if you take that side paneling and come down to about 50% of that side length, that's what we're saying, is you can kind of enclose it on the sides down to that 50%.
So the one on the upper right wouldn't necessarily meet the requirement.
That meets the other part of the standard that we have written in there, which is under G. As an alternative to the open facade requirements above, the lower 50% of an enclosed side may be filled in with a solid material, provided the director finds that the proposed enclosed material, finish, color, and detailing are architecturally compatible with the principal building.
Okay.
So we kind of threw that in there because of ones like that, where if you architecturally integrate into your house and make it look a lot nicer, there's a little bit more of that flexibility.
And Chair, members of the commission, I just want to note that the reason for the 50% being restricted to the top for the metal carport buildings is because if you start to add ones to the bottom, then you have areas where people can lean things against on the inside, and before you know it, it becomes a collection haven. So that's why we limit to the top to actually let it function as a carport, which is for the protection of the top of your vehicles, not the bottom, where it could tempt you to continue to close it in or attract clutter and such.
Any further questions for staff from the commission?
Well, Mr. Chair, just a comment from Zoom. I'm actually kind of horrified to see them out in front, because the last thing I want to see driving down the streets of Cheyenne is carports on every street, especially as they, get hard to see around. And I mean, they're just ugly. But what other municipalities even allow carports in the front of the house? It's just very surprising to me.
I believe that question was directed to staff. So,
Chair, members of the commission, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. We didn't take a deep dive in this. This was again a council member initiated change based on a constituent that had made a complaint and had some concerns with how to construct a carport. I'm not aware of any regulations that would allow this in these contexts that are illustrated. There could be the context of zero lot line developments or alley loaded carports that are just off the alley. Those do exist in other communities. But when you have I'm not aware, nor have we researched ones where you are allowed to have a carport that essentially encroaches into a required front setback. But we didn't look for it.
I just see this, I guess, Mr. Chairman, where I'm coming from, I see this as lowering property values. I don't know. We can't have them in the front of houses, in my opinion. And I see them as lowering property values. Make you and your neighbor get into it. They just throw up a big ugly carport in front of your house. I mean, or you go to sell your house and one of them pops up overnight. Then what do you sell your house for? I guess the front, having them in the front of the house is just a deal breaker for me on this.
Here, members of the commission, if I may, I want to correct something really quick or just note something.
Director Bloom, and I guess, Commissioner, is there a question in there for staff to respond to?
That's all right. Never mind.
Yeah, how did they study how it affects property values, I guess?
Okay.
Chair, I just wanted to provide some clarification on how the assessor sets property values. Property values in Wyoming are based off of construction value of a property, and then they're weighted on condition of the property. A brand new structure, a house, accessory building, you will be assessed on that at a high quality structure based on, and also concrete, if you put concrete down, based on the time from which it was installed. After that, then it would decrease to a level of good, is what they call it, which lasts for a certain time period. Again, it's based on the square footage and the rebuild value of that property, not aesthetics. Then the county assessor is able to do deviations downward after a certain time period, which are based on the condition of the property and the basically the decrease in property. What is the right term? Diminishment of the investment. I'm not sure what the right term is. There is a misnomer across the world of planning where uses or changes in uses lower property values when that's typically not the case. Now, it may be accurate to say that a change in regulation to allow something different that might result in something unattractive, it may not lower property value per se, but it may decrease aesthetics or property desirability. So I just want to clarify, it's not a property value change, it would be a property desirability change, which could reduce a sales price based on desirability. So I just want to provide that clarification because we hear it a lot with development proposals.
Okay, thank you.
I guess with that response, Mr. Chairman, when I look at this, what I would like to see is if they would like a carport out front, is something similar to how we allow chickens at somebody's house. They have to petition their neighbors and their neighbors have to sign off on it, because I see this as affecting the entire neighborhood and not just the property owner. And when it's in your backyard, you know, it's more secluded. When it's on side of your house, more secluded. But when it's in your front yard, it is in front and center for everybody. And so I would just like to see some protection in place for everybody surrounding these people.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you, I have a question.
Commissioner Hernandez?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yes.
kind of going off what Megan just mentioned, so somebody can just go out there and just build a carport as long as, you know, as it goes through the requirements of the sides, the top, whatever. There's not like a standard, like I mean, they can just build whatever, or is there actually going to be like, it has to be it has to be metal, it has to be this, it has to be, you know, is there any kind of criteria?
Mr. Chair, through you. So We don't have any criteria in the zoning code. They do have to meet building code requirements. So it can't just be, I mean, you can't just put up some random material that's not going to have a snow load or anything like that. It's still going to have to meet building code requirements, but we have nothing that says it has to be metal or it has to incorporate design elements of the house or it has to be made of wood. There's none of that within this proposed text amendment. A lot of building materials are going to be probably dictated by building code. What can support the snow load, what can meet their requirements when it comes to building code requirements.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions from the commissioners who are on Zoom before I start pestering the people on the dais? Okay. Commissioner Laird, you indicated you had a question for staff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, I have a few, I think. But first, Connor, you've got several places in here where you talk about a conditional use review, particular number of carports per dwelling, the height of the principal building or exceeding the height of the principal building, and exceeding the 600 square feet. I'm thinking, do you mean variance or is that just a generic term for going through the board for an exception?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, I don't know if we had anything come before you while you were on the Board of Adjustment, but we actually did kind of change the accessory building code where you can actually, instead of a variance size and everything, we allow conditional use now. The reason for that is the conditional use looks more at character of the neighborhood. Does it fit? Can it meet these requirements kind of rather than the strict, you know how strict the variance code could be. I mean, if we had anything as a variance, I don't know, probably 9 times out of 10, it probably won't even make it through. So with the conditional use, there's a little bit more of the flexibility. You still have to look, does it really match the neighborhood? So say somebody did want 2 carports. Maybe in this neighborhood, nobody else has a single carport or even has, or if they have a carport, they have 1. So why should you have 2? The conditional use kind of looks at that. What's the character of the neighborhood? Does it make sense for somebody else to have 2 now in the neighborhood? Or if they want the additional carport and they already have a detached garage plus 5 sheds, something crazy on the property, does it really make sense? So that's why we have that in there for conditional use. That's kind of something we've looked at when it comes to kind of alternatives. It still goes to the Board of Adjustment. It's just instead of a variance, you're kind of using the conditional use criteria.
Okay, Mr. Chair, that's one question, and I appreciate that clarification because I think they did change that nomenclature. So that picture in the upper right, I'm still hung up on that, which appears to me to be just an extension of the house. I mean, I wouldn't call it an accessory building of any kind. I would call it an extension of the house. And it seemed to me like when I was on the Board of Adjustment, we did have a few carports come to us, various configurations, but one of the things we seemed like we talked about was if it were attached to the house, then it was considered part of the house or an extension of the house, which triggered other requirements about foundations and how it's secured to the house and things like that. It was a little easier just to put up a freestanding building, but then in fact, it is an accessory building and you have to get into the setbacks like from the side of the house and things like that. So I guess I'm still stuck on that picture being an example of a carport, because in my mind, that would not apply in this section at all. That would, no matter where it is in the setback, it seems to me like it's just part of the house.
And staff, to follow up, I wanted to ask if there would be a way to draft this that would be more tolerant of something in the top right-hand corner, even if the commission is not on board with the other 2 examples in the photograph.
Chair, members of the commission, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. Several years back, we took this very idea to you all as part of our Unified Development Code annual review. And we also took it to the governing body as a work session. And at that time, the topic specifically was to allow for carports that were integrated in the house. That was the provision. They did not have an appetite to move forward with that, and we did not receive any direction. So we came back with a new appetite, which is this lesser design standard. So that's what happened. So definitely there are other, and again, this is coming from one council member. I don't know what other support would be there, but they are the ones who are making this request. I would like to note with that top right picture, that is very likely a conforming structure, but picture the road 4 feet away from that structure. That's when it would be non-conforming because it would be in that front setback. So that was just used for an aesthetic example, not a locational example. But I hope that does clarify it. We could make amendments that could change the process to conditional use for all of these elements where we do look at appropriateness in the neighborhood. We could draft it as is, keep it moving forward as is and let the council make a decision, or you could make a generalized recommendation to the governing body that they consider a change in the process to require like a conditional use approval or some type of aesthetics. And you could postpone it as well.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just add for the one that's in the upper kind of right. I know that it's probably not the typical type of carport you would look at because it is integrated into the house. It looks like it is part of the house. But ultimately, all that functions, it's open on the entire 50% top half over that wall. It's a carport. It covers your vehicles. That's what it's for. It's not a fully enclosed garage. So other than calling it a carport, I'm not entirely sure what you would call it, but it is a type of carport. It's integrated into the house. It is the more aesthetically pleasing type of carport, I would say, where they took the effort instead of putting just a metal carport out there. That is in the community. You can actually find it right on 8th Avenue. If you drive down 8th by Holiday Park. Or not Holiday, Lions, sorry. I don't know why I was thinking Holiday, but Lions Park. So that was more like Director Bloom said. I really threw that in there as kind of, that one is conforming. It conforms with the 25-foot front setback already. But I wanted to throw it in there as kind of an example of that is something somebody could do. In the other two photos, they could extend off the front of their garage and make it look like part of the house with this amendment. But this amendment also allows what is in the other two photos, metal carports on front driveways. But yeah, just mostly through that picture in there is kind of, that is more of a probably aesthetically pleasing version of what I would consider a carport. That's actually a photo that I used back when I think we had a work session with council as well, and possibly even with this planning commission, but that was several years ago when we did that. So
as a follow-up to that, then, where it's integrated into the house, if a carport is regulated as an accessory building, that would not be an accessory building, would it, if it's actually part of the building itself?
Correct. And Mr. Chair, through you. So then if it's regulated under our current code, it would not be an accessory building. If it's integrated and would become part of the principal building, meaning it needs a 25-foot front setback from the front property line. Even if it's an accessory, is currently under code as an accessory building and within 3 feet of your house, it still needs to be 25 feet from the front property line, because if you remember, we did change our accessory building code to any accessory building within 3 feet of another structure becomes part of that structure for setbacks. So if it's within 3 feet of the house, it now needs to meet your house's setbacks. So yes, as an accessory building under current code, or if it's integrated into the house, it needs to meet the house's setbacks. With the new proposed code, if we consider it a carport, then it can be within that 2 feet of the front property line. But again, it can't be enclosed more than the 50% on the sides. That's where we kind of prevent somebody from extending their garage all the way to the front property line and have this enclosed structure all the way out there that then becomes a tunnel. And as we had mentioned, probably becomes clutter.
I guess one last question has to do with the sides. Was there any thought or discussion in preparing this of we've got some design standards, worried about clutter, but in my mind, I assume the point of a carport is still protection from hail. Whether the hail is coming vertically, whether it's coming horizontally, whether it's coming in a swirl, and the two unsightly carports, I assume, don't offer much protection from hail with wind. Just as long as there's no wind with the hail, then they're okay. Is that fair?
Mr. Chair, through you, that could be fair to say, but also with being able to even cover 50% of the sides, I believe that still covers a majority of the side of your vehicle, at least the important parts such as glass. Even if it's coming sideways, it's probably might not cover the entire car. So yes, your tires and maybe the lower half of your car is potentially getting hit by the hail, but it's still protecting the glass.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commission for staff before we open it up for public comment? Commissioner Laird.
Mr. Chair, through you, and this is just kind of a big picture planning theory question. So what is the purpose of setbacks, particularly front and side street setbacks? Is it purely aesthetic? Is there any functional reason to have those?
Mr. Chair, through you, generally it has to do with aesthetics. Because there's even talking with Seth when he went to San Francisco, you have a driveway into your front loaded garage that's 5 feet before you hit the garage. So they seem to have a lot closer setbacks on their residential structures in San Francisco than we allow here with our 25-foot front setback. So setbacks are mostly their aesthetics. It's how do you want your streetscape to look? Do you want it to be inviting? Do you want it to be more open? That's why when you get into some areas, like I guess a good example is our NR zones, those all require rear loaded garages. Again, that's so you don't have front loaded garages. Your front of the house is more aesthetically kind of up front, to have porches, to have those connections, to basically make the streetscape more aesthetically pleasing. So I would say when it comes to setbacks, it's about aesthetics, at least in the front. When it comes to side setbacks, that can get a lot into fire code, building code things, where you want to have structures be a certain distance from property lines on the side so you're not burning down your neighbor's house if your house catches on fire. And then rear setbacks, our department's looked into a lot. Do we need rear setbacks any longer? Do rear setbacks really matter when it comes to the rear of the property? The front, I would say it's mostly it's the streetscape. It is aesthetics.
Commissioner Mathey.
Yep. Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you. I kind of like the idea of having at least a 2-foot setback. I think of kids riding their bikes down the sidewalk, running into the pole of the carport, and at least 2 feet would be some measure of safety for the kids, and even for like running your snowblower or something like that. You might want to keep the pole away from the sidewalk.
Any other questions for staff? Questions from commissioners on Zoom? Okay. With that, I'll open this up for public comment. Are there any members of the public present or on Zoom who wish to speak?
And as a reminder, please use the raise hand feature if you would like to speak.
Public comment going once, going twice. Public comment is now closed. And for the commission, I'm gonna take, before I open this up for a motion, I am gonna take issue with Commissioner McFay's 2 feet. I don't think 2 feet is anywhere near adequate to protect us from what I'm concerned about for pedestrians.
I agree, but I'm also trying to be reasonable.
Okay, is there a motion from the commission? I'm looking for a motion for us to discuss.
Mr. Chair, I move to recommend the governing body approve text amendment to the Unified Development Code, creating section 5.8.9 carports and amending section 1.4.3 defined terms and section 5.8.8 accessory buildings as outlined in the staff report and recommended by staff, noting the amendments meet the review criteria of UDC 2.4.1.d.
It's been moved by Commissioner Hernandez. Do I have a second?
I will second that motion.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Tripp. Discussion or amendment by the commission. Any commissioners want to speak?
Mr. Chair, I
Commissioner Laird?
I move to make an amendment.
Okay,
I would like to change the definition of a carport to read: a carport functions to offer limited overhead protection to vehicles, period. No, sorry. Limited overhead protections to vehicles from the elements, period. The structure may be a freestanding accessory building or attached to another structure.
So, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify. So we're striking, so it's a carport is used to offer limited protection. So basically striking an accessory building.
Right. My issue is based on what Commissioner Wiggum or Chairman Wiggum was talking about earlier. I think it's a little contradictory that in some cases it is an accessory building, in some cases it's not, based on whether it's freestanding or attached. Yet the first sentence flat out says it's an accessory building. I don't think it is in the case where it's attached. So I attempted to take the accessory building part of the definition, put it in the second sentence, and just talk about the first section as the function to provide overhead protection.
okay, it's been moved. Do we have a second to Commissioner Laird's proposed motion? Do we have a second?
Could you reread it, please?
A carport functions to offer limited overhead protection to vehicles from the elements, period. The structure may be a freestanding accessory building or attached to another structure.
Second.
It's been moved to amend by Commissioner Laird and seconded by Commissioner Mathey. Any discussion of the proposed amendment from the commission? Commissioners on Zoom? Comments, discussion? Hearing none. Staff, please call roll on the amendment.
Megan Connor,
Yes.
Amy Hernandez,
Yes.
Justin Tripp,
Yes.
Tony Laird,
Aye.
Bob Mathia.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that amendment passes.
Okay, thank you. We're back on the main motion as amended. Any other further discussion from the commission? Commissioner Laird?
Mr. Chair, through you, this isn't an amendment yet, but I also like the idea of not letting that carport be built right up against a sidewalk. And I liked Chairman Wiggum's thought earlier about maybe making a dimensional requirement having to do with the distance of the carport from the sidewalk, not necessarily from the property line, because obviously in many of our properties, the property line already is several feet into a yard from the sidewalk. So I don't know that the condition of the location of the property line is as relevant as the sidewalk versus the carport. And I'm not sure that 2 feet is enough either, but I'd like to see what someone else has for an idea.
And Mr. Chair, if I may offer a suggestion. So with something with kind of what you're thinking, you could amend, it'd have to be an amendment, I think, to probably C1 and C3, because one deals with the front property line, the other deals with corner lots. And where it states 2 feet from the street facing property line, and you could state 5 feet from a sidewalk or 10 feet from a sidewalk, whichever is greater, or I'm trying to remember if we say greater or less. Whichever one is more restrictive or something like that. To make it so that if basically if a property line is already 10 feet from a public sidewalk, they're still required that 2 feet, potentially, unless the director can determine to drop that to 0. They're still 10 feet from the sidewalk. If the property line's only 5 feet from the public sidewalk, but you say it needs to be set back 10 feet, it has to be set back 10 feet. The 2 feet from the property line doesn't matter, because that property line's only 5 feet from the sidewalk. So we could write that could be written in there so that it still requires the 2 feet from a property line, but then also 10 feet from a public sidewalk, or 5 feet, whatever the commission determines is the best distance to be from a public sidewalk. You could write that in there as well, kind of after the 2 feet kind of line. So basically adding it on to that. That would be my suggestion for something along those lines, so that you still have both in there. But then also you're making it so that if a property line is greater than the distance you're saying from the sidewalk, they still have to be that 2 feet as well from the property line.
Commissioner Laird, perhaps something along, I'm going to tackle C1 here, maybe something that would read, front yard carport shall be set back a minimum of 2 feet from the street facing property line, comma, and also a minimum of 10 feet from any sidewalk. Period. Which would mean that it would have to meet both setbacks at least. And maybe something similar in C3. Does that capture your thought?
It does. I'm not sure if 10 feet's the right distance either, but it's a lot better than none or 2 feet.
That's for the commission to decide. 5 feet, 10 feet, 50 feet, 3 feet.
Mr. Chair, just be careful on how many feet you're doing, because again, the front setback for any home is 25 feet. So, and if that property line is at the back edge of sidewalk and you start shrinking it, you're basically not allowing them. Just something to keep in mind as well.
Commissioner Mathia?
Well, I was just, what Connor's just said is, what I was wondering is if we were going to make it impossible to build a carport, if we make it the setback too far. I was thinking 5 feet, and I know you'd like more, but I'm not certain. What's the, on where you see these things being put up, what's the average setback that you're seeing?
Mr. Chair, through you, and actually Director Bloom just showed me Colorado Springs actually does allow them in their front yards. They have it at 5 feet from a sidewalk. And then they have at least 10 feet from curb or roadway. So they have kind of a double there, where 5 feet from any sidewalk, but then also 10 feet from any curb or roadway. But they do actually in Colorado Springs allow them in the front yard setback. So that's what they have. Again, it's up to the commission to go with. To answer Commissioner Mathia's question about what we kind of already see, it varies. It really depends on how far the house is set back from its front property line and where that front property line sits. Is that front property line adjacent to that detached sidewalk or the attached sidewalk? Or is it a number of feet off of those sidewalks? It varies throughout the community. So if in some cases you have an attached sidewalk and the property line is adjacent to the back edge of that sidewalk and the house is 25 feet, these carports could be almost right at the sidewalk in some cases. It really does vary. It's hard to really say what we're seeing. Again, going back to even the pictures, I mean, if you look at the one that's on the left, that is here in the community, that is set, I don't know, 10, 15 feet from the sidewalk, maybe. It is set quite far back. It's not 2 feet from their front property line. It's set further back, but again, it's gonna vary depending on the situation. So, but just want to throw that out there with what Director Bloom found for Colorado Springs. They have theirs at the 5 feet.
Just as a general question, though, is there any chance that any of these were installed legally, either through so whatever the setback is, it's not just whatever people decide to do. It's Wild West out there.
Mr. Chair, through you, so I can, again, the upper right-hand corner one where it's integrated in the house, that when that was built, that actually meets current setback requirements for the house. So that one's fine. The metal carports, under current code, neither one of those are legal. They were just thrown on a driveway. I don't even know if they have building permits, to be honest. So with the proposed code, the one on the left, I could probably have a definite say that it would become conforming and legal. The one on the bottom right is a lot more questionable with how close it is.
Okay. What, do we know if the carports were even permissible pre-UDC such that there might be some that are legal or were legal when they were installed?
Mr.
The
Chair,
metal type?
Mr. Chair, through you, I guess it depends how they reviewed them pre-UDC, if they were considered accessory buildings or not. If they were accessory buildings under pre-UDC, they would not have been allowed, because even under pre-UDC, I think it was still your accessory building couldn't be in your front yard. But I can't speak for how planners reviewed them, because even in current UDC, we don't call carports out anywhere. Staff basically has just looked at carports as being accessory buildings and has reviewed them as such. That has been staff's kind of directive on how to review those.
And Chair, members of the Planning Commission, I just want to note real quick a little bit of details on Colorado Springs. It was adopted in 2021 after a council work session, lots of discussion. It was a narrow vote, 4 yes, 3 no. The primary intent was for weather protection, very similar to what is here. It is a maximum of 5 feet from the sidewalk, 10 feet from any curb line. So if you have a sidewalk or if you have a detached sidewalk, it changes. Also, the maximum size is 500 square feet. It allows the metal looking ones here, provided the lower 60 inches remains open. So didn't know about it, but we seem to be pretty darn close to what they went through. And their policy was driven on and basically looking at the fact it appears that a lot of people had been building these without permits. Oh, and it does clearly say they have to have a building permit. But a lot of their discussion in the articles I've seen about it note that there are a lot of non-compliant structures that either had to be brought into compliance upon enforcement action, or they had to be removed.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion. We do not have any amendments. We're discussing the main motion. I would offer that I totally agree with Commissioner Connor that the metal carports are ugly beyond belief. I've got some in my neighborhood. And I also used to sell hail insurance and know what happens to people and their vehicles and hailstorms in Cheyenne. And we know that we're going to have 1 or 2 big ones that are going to total out cars again this summer. So I get the desire as well. But back to the issue of setbacks. Do we want? I would say now is the time to offer an amendment to change the setback language if we want to do that. Otherwise, unless there's some other point of conversation, I'm gonna head us toward calling for a vote.
I would move, we make the setback 5 feet,
Setback 5 feet from,
the sidewalk.
in addition to the 2-foot proposed setback, or just a 5-foot setback from any sidewalk?
I would say 5 foot from any sidewalk.
Okay. And does this replace the language that's in there now? Okay. So for the record, as I understand it, the motion is to amend 5.8.9 C1 to read front yard carport shall be set back a minimum of 5 feet from any sidewalk. What happens if there's not a sidewalk?
Then
Or
you need to go with the curb that,
Okay, curb or sidewalk, okay? And
no, 10 feet from the curb, 5 feet from the sidewalk.
So
However, oh, sorry. 5 feet from the sidewalk and 10 feet from the curb if there is no sidewalk.
okay. Does that make sense? Can I call for a second?
Mr. Chair, through you, I was going to propose that amendment myself, but I'm stuck on C3 because C3 is even more confusing to me, but talking about the direction the carport's oriented and all those things. I kind of like your language about any sidewalk, which would seem like cover both front sidewalks and sidewalks at the same time.
So I'm looking for a second. Can I ask staff a question here? How does Colorado Springs deal with carports on the side? If the motion that we're contemplating seconding basically mirrors Colorado Springs language.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, not entirely sure if they talk about the side kind of corner lot situation. It probably might function the same as a front, which is how we have it written ultimately in ours. The only difference in C3 is you don't get the 2 foot kind of from the side property line if you put the sidewall, the carport facing the side property line. So if you drove into the driveway and turned 90 degrees into the carport, you can't have a carport that's the long way along your side property line. It has to be for vehicular access directly in is to get the reduction. So that's why C3 is a little bit longer than 1. But ultimately it's the same thing. It's still allowing the 2 feet. So I would almost recommend that if you're going to make the amendment to C1, make the same amendment to C3 and just replace the 2 foot from a street facing property line to the 5 feet from any public sidewalk and 10 feet from the curb.
Okay, we've got a motion, and is your motion just to C1, or do you want to adopt the same language as suggested to C3?
I would move that we do apply to
Okay.
both.
Okay, and I don't have a second yet.
I second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Commissioner Tripp.
Yes, Chairman, my only concern putting this language in there is each property is different. So if you have a short, I don't know, I have concerns with putting 5 feet in there. Just because I don't want to limit a homeowner from being able to put a carport in there because it is his property And as long as it's not interfering with the sidewalk. So I just have concerns with putting that in there.
Okay, any further discussion? Commissioner Laird?
Mr. Chair, just in the way of discussion on the main motion, I agree with what,
Point of order, I think we're discussing the amendment, and then we can talk about the main motion. Let's stay on the amendment.
I withdraw my comment.
Any further discussion on the amendment with different setbacks? Anything from commissioners in Zoom? Hearing none. Will staff please call roll on the amendment?
Yes, I was going to clarify. We are on the amendment. Justin Tripp,
No,
Megan Connor,
Aye.
Bob Mathai,
Yes.
Tony Laird,
I,
Amy Hernandez.
No,
Mr. Chair, that amendment does pass.
Okay, thank you. We're back on the main motion. Commissioner Laird, you had some discussion?
my discussion just is that I agreed a lot with Commissioner O'Connor or Connor's comments earlier. I'm going to vote no on the main motion. I just think aesthetically for our community and this allowing these carports in the front is not good. Whether people have been building them or not, they shouldn't be, and they shouldn't continue.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Tripp?
thank you. I think I go back to property rights. If an owner wants to put one up there, I have concerns. I may not agree with what it looks like, but it's their property. So I would support this based on that. And also, I just think, there's been some examples with Colorado Springs. There's weather protection issues out there. Not everybody has a garage. Not everybody can afford to extend from their property either. So that's my thoughts on it.
Any further discussion? I'd just kind of, to this discussion, part of it is the setback. Echoing Commissioner Connor's comments, even if we do permit carports, I'm not convinced that they're necessarily appropriate for every property, that there still needs to be space for people to circulate and walk around and, not shade the sidewalk all winter long so it stays icy and those kind of things. Secondly, I do think that as ugly as they are, and I'm going to reiterate, there's nobody in North America that I know of that gets more hail than Cheyenne, Wyoming. So with that, will staff please call roll?
All right, and we are on the main motion. Tony Laird,
No,
Before we go for a vote, could you read the motion again now as it's, or as the proposal as it's now written?
I can mention how it's written. So this is moving to approve the text amendment as proposed by staff, but it is amended so that the definition for carports is a carport functions to offer protection. Let me go back. Carport functions to offer limited protection to vehicles from the elements. The structure may be freestanding or attached to another structure. And then also amends C.1 and C.3 so that those read front yard carports shall be set back a minimum of 5 feet from any public sidewalk and 10 feet from the curb. And then same thing with C3 on corner lots where carports take direct vehicular access from the side street through the narrow dimension of the carport. The side setback shall from the street facing side property line shall be reduced to 5 feet from any public sidewalk and 10 feet from the curb.
Can I ask a quick question? I know I called for a vote. With the amendment we just made to the setbacks, is there any scenario in which the way we have it written would permit the carport to be built within public right of way? Or are we safe with those two constraints?
Mr. Chair, I would say we're still safe because you can't build a structure within the public right of way. So
Okay, we've got that covered.
no matter
Okay.
what, they will have to be on the property. Now,
Okay.
if they're at 0 feet, that might allow them to be at 0 feet potentially, but to their property line, not to the sidewalk. You still got to be the distance from the sidewalk as you've amended it. But there's in no way can you have a carport in the right of way.
I just want to make sure. Thank you. Please call roll.
Okay. So again, we are on the main motion. Tony Laird,
No.
Justin Tripp,
Yes.
Bob Mathia,
Yes.
Megan Connor,
No.
Amy Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Other business, staff announcements.
Chair, members of the commission, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. At the last meeting of the last regular meeting of the governing body, there is a moratorium ordinance that was introduced and referred to Public Service Committee regarding the construction of any data centers or advancing any development of a data center that doesn't presently have a shovel in the ground right now. So if you have an approved building permit but aren't digging, the proposal would essentially halt those in their tracks. I would note that this would not apply to an annexation of lands that are just being zoned to blanket zoning, because that could be any use. It's not necessarily a data center if it's zoned business park or industrial or light industrial. It is just a blanket zoning that could be anything from a tow truck yard to a data center. So there's a variety of folks there. That item was considered after a lengthy 3.5-hour discussion at Public Services Committee, which we for a second thought it might overlap into this meeting at the rate it was going, where it came out with no recommendation. So it will be considered by the governing body next Monday. Next Tuesday, sorry, no one will be here on Monday, thank goodness, it's Memorial Day holiday. But it will be considered at 6 o'clock on Tuesday by the entirety of the governing body, where it will either be approved on second reading and referred back to committee for consideration, and then final reading at a subsequent meeting in June, the first meeting for council in June, or it could just be denied on Tuesday, which would end that moratorium discussion. A lot of folks came to speak in favor of it and against it, including local citizens against it, lots of folks against it, lots of folks from local unions, and also from data center developers and economic development groups and state economic development representatives were here to speak in against the moratorium. So that's one major item that's been happening in our department. We do have a handful of items, a pretty significantly large agenda that's going to be moving forward in June. So apologies in advance for another longer meeting. Some of those are annexation related with pretty large land areas and business park or industrial zone districts that are associated with them as well.
And Mr. Chair, if I can add, just to clarify for the commission, there are 12 items on that agenda. So it's going to be a long agenda. Hopefully the meeting can run smoothly and we can get through items at a decent pace, but just be prepared for a long meeting.
And Chair, the one final item I have to note is that this Saturday, right over there in the library parking lot, there will be a safe streets like bicycle event from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock, where there will be a group putting together activities for kids to promote bicycle safety. There could be some bicycle helmets that will be handed out. I believe there might be. And then at noon, there will be a slow roll, which is a bicycle event for all ages that will take folks on a tour around the neighborhood around here. They're generally a a couple miles long, but they're great family activities. So again, this event's from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the library parking lot. The Active Transportation Advisory Committee is partnering up with the Greenway Foundation, which is partnering up with another group that's hosting it. There's a bunch of community folks. And then there's a slow roll at noon, which is, if you haven't been on a slow roll, they do slow roll events every Wednesday, meeting at the Big Boy, starting at 6 p.m. and it starts on the 27th. It's truly a great time. And that's it.
I just had one question, excuse me, Mr. Chair. Have we cleared up all of the county patchworks in the city except for that farm?
Chair, members of the Planning Commission, no. That last annexation piece actually had 10 county pockets. Were about 14 or 17 individual properties, give or take a few. That is presently postponed until that November 9th, first meeting in November of the governing body, which means it'll go to committee that first Monday of November. I believe it's November 2nd.
Quick question. You mentioned the Safe Routes event. Did I see that the MPO is currently soliciting public comment on the safe routes to school that was somehow related to, or was it something else entirely with the recent plats that we've dealt with adjacent schools?
Chair, it is the MPO is presently working on their Safe Streets for All comprehensive safety action plan that was funded with a federal grant. They will be present at this event on Saturday as well, but they are also taking public comment on the draft plan through June 5th of 2026. If you were to go to plancheyenne.org and just safe streets, we can email you out the link. It's plancheyenne.org / safe streets -for -all. We'll get you there. And there's a public feedback request based on the draft plan.
Okay, but that's not school specific. That's community wide.
Chair,
Okay.
through you, that is more than school specific, it's community wide.
Thank you. Anything else? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.